Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this wonderful congressional briefing. In the past, the congressional briefings were in the houses, but I'm very grateful to both our co-chairs to be with us in this virtual congressional briefing this afternoon. As Harpreet has given you a very good background of the SAKA Nankana Sahib, as well as Nadine has very well elaborated what Sikh religion stands for. The beauty of the Sikh religion is it's one of the very modern faith of the world, and it believes in the coexistence. Where it believes in the coexistence, at the same time, it has a very strong sense of its own religious identity. And unfortunately, throughout the ages, throughout the centuries, the rulers, the autocratic governments, the imperialistic governments always try to snub that religious identity. And the Sikhs have in various centuries faced religious persecution as well as genocide, which the biggest, it starts from 1746 under the Hindu finance minister Lakhpat Rai, the first Sikh genocide. Then it goes to 1762, when an Afghan ruler attacked Punjab and committed the second Sikh genocide. And then ultimately, when the Sikh Empire was taken over by the British Empire, they did something even worse than the physical genocide. I was looking at the records, being a trained historian, that on 12th of August, 1857, Sir Robert reported to the East India Company that we need to look much deeper into the Sikh faith and the Sikh faith institution. And then they asked a certain Mr. Trump, that is not Donald J. Trump, that was Ernest Trump, whom the East India Company commissioned to write a report about the Sikhism. And in 1869, Mr. Trump published his Trump report, in which he mocked the Sikh faith and Sikh faith traditions, as well as he classified Sikhism as just a sect of Hinduism. That given birth to a great question of the Sikh identity under the British colonial rule. And in 1869, after this report, the British colonial masters, they try to interfere in the Sikh religion in such a way that they have given more strength to Arya Samajist movement in India, which was consistently mocking the Sikh faith. And in 1898, the question of the Sikh identity became legal when a Sikh philanthropist, Sardar Singh Jithia, died. And then he was classified as a Hindu, but he was a Sikh, and the matter ended up in the court. And British government consistently tried to curtail the Sikhs on identity. And at the same time, the majority of that very subcontinent of India was trying to snub the Sikhs. And there was a movement with the so-called turban wearing Sikhs like Khem Singh Bedi, who said Sikhs are no different religion than Hinduism. And then there were people who put that very strong alternative counter narrative. Someone called Bhai Kahan Singh Nabha, who wrote a book, Hum Hindu Nahi, which meant we are not Hindus, we are Sikhs, and we have our own identity. And then all these Sikh shrines in India, they were interfered by the state authorities, and a lot of idols were kept in these gurdwaras. And the Sikhs' right to freely worship in their places of worship was curtailed, as well as the Sikh identity was attacked, and hence the reason this movement was started. If we look at the contemporary period of SAKA Nankana Sahib and this massacre, we would know that in 1909, the British colonial masters given a piece of legislation which is called Indian Councils Act, and then in 1919, Monty Chelmsford reforms came as well. So through these pieces of legislation, the religious communities were getting more of representation in the legislative process, as well as in the Indian legislature under the British rule. But at that time, the majority of that country and the people who were from the majority faith community, they were trying to curtail the Sikh influence, as well as they were trying to capture all the Sikh places of worship. So their religious identity should not convert into their legislative and their constitutional fight, or their due representation shouldn't be given to the Sikhs. So this was not a simple matter of religious freedom. It was also related to the Sikhs representation in the legislature under the British colonial masters. Hence, this event, which was part of the big Sikh reform movement, which is called Singh Sabha movement, was a very much part of it. And let me tell my panelists today that there were 264 people and 6 souls were lost in 1921 in February, and the youngest one was just 6 year old. So um, a lot of people would give that narrative, and a lot of you can search about this event. But I think it's very important when we're looking at the narrative of history, we need to compare the history with the contemporary world. So these people have given their life, these 264 souls lost, to save the Sikh identity. But unfortunately, as a few of our speakers have already pointed out, the question of Sikh identity is still a very crucial question in Indian subcontinent today. As you are aware, and I have mentioned in my report published by United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, even today, the Constitution of India, Section 25, subclause B, still does not give Sikhs their separate identity, rather classify them as a subcaste of Hindus. And the Sikhs have been struggling against this over the years. Um, Commissioner Maniza would appreciate that it is a situation like the Qadianis in Pakistan have been given their separate identity as a minority. But in Indian constitution, it's different, where the Sikhs are struggling for them to be recognized as a religious community in on their own, but that is not being granted. So those who has given life in 1921, that issue even continues today. The second thing we should understand that these people were the peaceful protesters, and these peaceful protesters were they faced the brutality and atrocity crimes under the patronage of the British rule. But for the Sikhs, it's the same situation now. When we are 1 century down the line in 2021, we are seeing the similar patterns of state brutality. We have, Congressman John Garamendi was talking about the non-violence. We have seen absolutely in the farmer movements, no violence has been used by the protester, but they are facing the police brutality. The water cannons have been used, the people have been beaten up, the people have lost their lives. So when we talk about the non-violence, we should also emphasize that the non-violence should be followed by the state, because often we forget that the state terrorism is the worst aggression any community can face. So in 1921, peaceful protesters faced the brutality, and now Sikhs, the protesters, majority of them are the Sikhs, they are facing the same brutality today. Now, when we're talking about the atrocity crimes, Sikhs have been facing the atrocity crimes throughout, which are most of which are not recognized at the level they should be recognized at. I've given you the examples from the medieval history, as well as the Sikh genocide in 1984 and 1984 to 1996. That has not been recognized as genocide, and hence the world needs to wake up to this and recognize as a genocide. American Sikh Caucus already organized, as Harpreet was telling you, exclusive briefing about the genocide, where United Nations Under Secretary General Adama Dieng has participated. Now, it's about seeking justice for people. 1921 was a century ago, but let's talk about the contemporary world. A similar incident happened on 4th of February 1986, which is about 35, 38 years ago, and the 4 Sikh youth who were peaceful protesters were martyred, which is called SAKA Nakodar. Now, the family of the victims are still seeking justice, and the Indian government has constituted a commission on this massacre of SAKA Nankana Sahib, but the Indian government is not publicizing the report of the commission it constituted itself. It was a judicial commission headed by a retired Chief Justice, and Indian government is not publicizing that report because obviously that very report would pinpoint the state involvement in such crimes, such atrocity crimes. So in the real sense, nothing has changed for the Sikhs in the subcontinent. Now, I just want to talk about, because I think I don't want to go over my time limit. I want to give legacy that these people who have given their life in 1921 and where they have given their life, what they have achieved. What they have achieved is a very strong sense of identity of the Sikhs and reinforce that. And for this very Sikh identity, the Sikh gurus, starting from the fifth guru, the ninth guru, the 10th guru, and his sons, they have given their lives too. So they have walked on the path of their faith. And today, the people who are offering their struggle, their peaceful struggle for their faith, are on the same path. Now, if you go to Pakistan, I wish Nadine would be able to visit at some point because Pakistan is obviously a country of particular concern with some. But as Nadine was talking about Kartarpur uh, uh, corridor, which United Nations Secretary General has said it is a corridor of peace. Now, that corridor of peace is the legacy of these martyrs. If these martyrs in 1921 wouldn't had this great movement to liberate their gurdwaras and temple and the right of worship, today there would have been no Kartarpur corridor. And in Nankana Sahib, where this massacre happened, I think government of Pakistan have paid attention to it, and they have uh, had a very nice commemorative, not one, a whole complex dedicated to these martyrs. Now, most importantly, the legacy of these martyrs and their identity is as uh, Article 25 2B is not giving Sikhs their personal laws. We have been stressing on government of Pakistan that they should give Sikhs their personal laws in Pakistan. And I'm happy to reflect, I have just been told that on the commemoration, on this centennial commemoration, government of Pakistan going to implement Sikh personal laws first time in Pakistan. And the Sikh Marriage Act is being implemented in Pakistan, which will make Pakistan the first state to recognize the Sikh personal laws uh, as well as the marriage. So these martyrs have given their lives for Sikh identity, and we should salute them on this day. And this journey of getting Sikh recognized and the atrocity crimes against the Sikhs should continue. I would request United States Commission on International Religious Freedom as well as our congressmen that we should seek justice for these people who have faced atrocities in the past and now. And let me remind you, all of you, that today, where we are talking about Kartarpur corridor, where we are talking about Nankana Sahib, Commissioner Nadine, you should note that under this ultra national BJP government, a lot of Sikh shrines in India are now are the target of the Hindutva groups, and a lot of Sikh heritage is at stake. I know you have very nicely and very keenly worked about Yazidi sites and the Christian sites in the Middle East. One of the very major site which is related to the Sikh founder Guru Nanak, which is called Gurdwara Gyan Di Godri, and few other Sikh temples in India are at the risk to be demolished or completely wiped out like Babri Mosque in India. So we should pay particular attention to all these religious freedom violations. Commemorating people's sacrifice is only relevant if we learn lessons from it and the world community take those themes forward. I thank you all.